All right. Good evening. Daf Yomi is sponsored anonymously this week.
Last night, yeah.
And just the last night of that anonymous sponsorship show. Hopefully everybody who needs a shidduch, you've got tonight. So if you haven't asked somebody. So we're sponsored anonymously in the merit of all those in our community who need a shidduch. So go for it. Okay. That's our advice. Okay. We were in the middle of trying to figure out where our source was for the idea that you could get away with only one sprinkling for the korban chatos instead of needing two according to Beis Shammai. Well, two, Beis Shammai says two, but instead of needing four, which is a mitzvah. And we said that Hillel says that keeper, right? And we said that the first keeper tells me even though I've only applied 3 times. The second keeper tells me I only applied twice. And then the third keeper tells me only even if I applied it once, it's still valid. So the Gemara wants to know, Ema, why don't you explain it a different way? Maybe the words v'chiper can be interpreted differently. Maybe v'chiper afal b'shalon nasan ela shalosh lemala v'achas lemata. Maybe it doesn't mean that you left one out entirely. Maybe it means that you put 3 in the right place and put 1 in the wrong place. And then that still works. And then v'chiper a second time means afal b'shalon nasan ela shtayim lemata ushtayim lemala, that you did 2 in the wrong place and 2 in the right place. And v'chiper then the third time is afal b'shalon nasan lemala ela lemata, that you didn't put any below. What happened to 1? Well, so I think the Gemara mentions in a second, but let's at least point out that once you get to the majority being done in the wrong place, ruba kakula, and therefore we don't have to worry about the circumstance where you're putting 3 in the wrong place, 1 in the right place. We don't worry about that. But we're going to suggest that maybe this is telling us that the blood applications, not that they don't need to be done at all, but that they're acceptable if they're done in the wrong place. So Amar Rav Ada bar Yitzchak, Rabbi Ada bar Yitzchak says, Im kain bitalta Torah arba kronos. If that is the case, if you had interpreted that way, so then you would have ruined the need, right, for the applications to be done above the red line at all. Because basically this pasuk would be telling us, go ahead, put them below the red line, even if you don't do it at all. Which is not the way that we've done it, even if by the regular sprinkling, by the way, because regular sprinkling, we still need at least 1. This, we're suggesting, if you interpret it this way, you don't need to put any in the right place. You could put them all in the wrong place.
Maybe it just means b'diavad.
Yes. That was what was bothering me as I was saying it, right? If you're only, it only means that l'chachila you put it in the right place, the b'diavad you put it in the wrong place.
At the wrong time.
Kosher. So it's not necessary kronos chatos. It's a fair question. I'm not exactly sure of the answer, right? It was bothering me as I was saying it too, and I don't remember unfortunately, when you learned it a week ago, so then I don't remember why it didn't bother me the first time. But maybe that's why I do 2 Daf Yomi, so that I can figure out what I didn't understand the second time through. I'm with you. I'm not exactly sure. I did not ask that question, but now as I was reading, I hope nobody asked that question. And he asked the question, so it's a good question. V'irachmana Amar, and now if the Torah says that that you can put them all below, libat lun, so okay, so then who cares? Right? Oh, so that's exactly the question. That's exactly the point. And that is only that you only have to do it above l'chadchila. That's the point the Gemara is trying to make. Okay, good. So that's the question. So, Amar Rava says, Ezu davar shetzarich shalosh haviyomer elu kronos. So Rava says you can't interpret it this way because what is the thing that you will only write 3 times. It doesn't write the chiper 4 times. It only writes it 3 times. It has to be you're reducing the number of applications that you need altogether, right? Because otherwise, you should write it a 4th time because there's 4 chronos that you wouldn't be needed. So therefore, why 3? It must be that you're removing it from being required. Okay, so Ema v'chiper afa b'shalon nasan ela achas lemala v'shalosh lemata. So fine, maybe we can just use 3 of them. And maybe we're going to learn that not that you can get rid of them altogether, but 1 above and 3 below is acceptable too if 3 are in the wrong place. So the answer is, Lo matzinu dabim shechetzion lemala v'chetzion lemata. We've never seen a circumstance where the blood is half applied above, half applied below, and the korban is going to, and the korban is still going to be, that's going to be kosher. So therefore, that wouldn't be an option for us. So vilo, what do you mean we don't? We have other situations like that. That's not. We learned a Mishnah. V'hizami menu achas lemala v'sheva lemata. By the sprinklings of the korbanos on Yom Kippur, right? You do achas lamala, then 1, 2, 3, 7 on down low. So you're telling me we never have a circumstance where you can put part of the blood above, part of the blood below. The Torah is giving us permission to do that. The Torah wouldn't give us permission to do that. Yeah, but we do. We have that. So the answer is it's not the same. Kematzlif. It's supposed to be like a matzlif. Good question. Gemara wants to know that too. My kematzlif. What is a matzlif? Mechve Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda showed him, right? And he said, ke menagda, that it's like a messenger of Beis Din, one of the shlichos Beis Din, who do the malchus, and they do it lower and lower and lower as they go down, right? So the point is that when you put the blood up 1 and down 7, so up 1, down 7 does not mean up 1, down 7 so that you're putting the blood in different locations. It's just the method of sprinkling is different. I go up once and then I go down 7 times, but I'm doing basically a straight line of applications towards the parochas. So therefore, it's not the same as I'm applying it here and now I'm applying it here. That we never have. We never say apply some here and some here. That we never have. Okay, we are at the very bottom of Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, about to turn the page. Gemara wants to know further. Hizara al tiharo shel mizbeach sheva pa'amim. So he has sprinkled. The Mishnah tells us that you're supposed to sprinkle blood from these inner korbanos on the top of the gold menorah, the small menorah that's on the menorah, mizbeach, that's on the inside, right? So my lav apalge de mizbeach. So are we not talking about, when we're talking about the taharo of the mizbeach, the upper part of the mizbeach, right? You've got the mizbeach. It looked like I don't know what that was. Okay. You've got the inner mizbeach. It looks like this. Tiharo is the upper part, we're presuming. So therefore, you're going to apply it up here, right? So
from seeing that looks like more like a teaser for Worm City.
Yeah, but you have to. Yeah, well, I didn't draw it in 3D. I'm gonna draw it in 3D for you, and draw it along, right? Right. He's always got a comment here. Okay, we got 3D drawing for Yehuda. Okay, it goes back there, and then the other corner over there. Okay, that doesn't line.
There we go.
Okay, that looks a little bit better.
There we go. Yeah.
That's our Chronos there. Okay. Okay, so now, you have to be for Yehuda. You can't get away with drawing a flat 2-stick figure mizbeach in this Daf Yomi. Okay, that's how MD1 got started. That's apalge de mizbeach. It's like kedamri inshi. The Gemara tells us no. It's tihara, that the part of the mizbeach is the upper part of the mizbeach. Why would we say that the word tahara mizbeach, where you're supposed to do applying the blood, is the upper part of the mizbeach? It's like people say, tiher tihara, right? When they say the afternoon, meaning that the second part of the day is diyoma, right? The second part of that day. So it's the second part of the day is called the tihara, which means that the second half of the mizbeach is the tahar part. This is the tahar of the mizbeach, the upper section of the mizbeach, which we're presuming means somewhere in this upper section, and that's the application. So, and so sometimes if it sprinkles below that section as well, so that will be, some of it's going to be as you're going down sprinkling, you're sprinkling 7 times, some of it's going to be below, and hence we see that you do have a circumstance where you can sprinkle part of it above and part of it below. Amar Rava Barshila says, "Lo, no, that is not what the tahar mizbeach is. Agiluye, it's the top of the mizbeach. The top of the mizbeach, the sprinkling that was done 7 times was up here. That's where they did the sprinkling of the 7 times. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, uke'etzem hashamayim latohar, the source of the pasuk that says that it was like the pure beauty of, I guess, the whatever they were looking at that was beneath the throne of God when he was delivering the luchos, was like, it was so pure. It was like the strength of Shemayim, right? Pasuk is explaining.
Got through the miradas, or through the
there's no meat here, right? This is the pasuk is talking about the seeing of the kisei hakavod and describing the kisei hakavod in how its clarity. It was so clear and brilliant. So therefore, the word tiharo means brilliant and clear. So therefore, he's putting it on the top of the mizbeach. So that's the upper section of the mizbeach is called the tahar, and so therefore none of the blood is going down below. So therefore, again, we never have a circumstance where we're going to do some parts of the blood application, some parts of the blood application. Yeah, but v'ha'ika shirayim. What about the fact that we know that after you sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach, you then take the rest of the blood and you pour it into the drain on the mizbeach? Isn't the drain down below and the blood application up above? The answer is shirayim l'makfi. Shirayim is not a blood application. It's not required, right? We said that's an extra mitzvah. So v'ha'ika shirayim hapnimim. What about the pouring of the blood of the korbanos that are on the inside, right? The blood of the korbanos that are brought inside the mizbeach. After you apply the blood there, you have to take the blood outside and pour it down the mizbeach. So the answer is de'ika deman de'amar me'akfi, and there is somebody who holds that in that circumstance, that's actually a required part of the service. So the answer is bechad makom kamrinan. We never have, that's a different mizbeach, right? The drain for the blood, the extra blood, is located on the mizbeach that's outside in the courtyard. The blood for the inner mizbeach is sprinkled on the gold mizbeach on the inside. We never have a blood application that's brought up at the top of the mizbeach and on the bottom of the mizbeach on the same mizbeach. It can be that you could have blood application on the top of the inner mizbeach and then pour the blood out on the base of the outer mizbeach. That doesn't bother us, but there would never be a circumstance where you would put a blood above and below on the same mizbeach. Therefore, you cannot interpret v'chiper in that way, and therefore v'chiper is telling us that one blood application is sufficient for korban chatos. Mitzvah to do it in all four corners, but one time is sufficient. Okay, good. Let's talk about something else. Tanya, we learn a brisa. Brisa says, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov from Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Beis Shammai Omrim, Beis Shammai says, Shtei matonos shebechatos ve'achas shebechol Zevachim matiros. He says that the blood applications that are required, as he says in our Mishnah, 2 are required for the korban chatos. Therefore, once you apply those 2, the meat is permissible, and the burning of the fats on the mizbeach is permissible, and there's only one blood application needed for the for other korbanos, right? And also, if you have pigul thoughts, once you do that one blood application or those 2 blood applications, that's going to create pigul. And mefaglos, as he says, it's matiros and mefaglos. Beis Hillel Omrim, Beis Hillel says, achas shebechatos, achas shebechol zvachim, materis umefagelos. Beis Hillel says, no, it's always one. Right, you don't need that. And that's essentially the argument that we've known between Hillel and Shammai, whether you need 2 by Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, whether you need 2 applications by chatos or only 1. Maskif la Rav Oshaya. Rav Oshaya asked the following question: Im kain, if Beis Shammai holds that you require 2 in order to be able to make a korban pigul, so then leis ne'eh gabe kulei Beis Shammai v'chumrei Beis Hillel. We have a Mishnah in Edios that tells us here's a list of things. Beis Shammai is usually the strict one, and Hillel is usually the lenient one. So here's a circumstance where Hillel is the strict one and Beis Shammai is the lenient one. Why? So because
in the situation.
That's correct, and it should be in the list. It should be in the list because if you require 2 blood applications in order to turn a korban pigul, that's lenient. Beis Hillel says even after only 1, it's pigul. So there's a leniency there. So Amar le Rava, so Rava says ki itchel hetera itchel. The answer is it all depends on how you ask the question. If you ask the question, how many blood applications does it take in order for it to become pigul, you're right, then 2 is a leniency. But if you ask the question, how many blood applications does it take in order to make the meat permissible for you to eat, then it's a leniency.
Just understand, he was both times he's thinking about doing it late, so it's pigul during the 2 blood applications, or you're saying that it's
even if he made that thought earlier on during the Shlita, during the Kabbalah,
right.
This blood application is the completion of the blood services, and if there's no other invalidating issues of the korban to that point, then it becomes pigul. Right? That's what we call it. The blood is the matir. That's our phrase for it. It permits the korban to move on to the next phase. It becomes accepted at that point.
Okay.
Because in that circumstance, if you're asking what makes it permissible, Beis Shammai is the strict one because he requires 2 applications. So therefore, that's why not. Okay. Let's talk about other halachos that apply. to these three last applications by the Korban Chatos. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan says, Sholosh matonos shebechatos, those three last applications by the Korban Chatos, einon bos belayla, you can't do them at night. Right? You may think it's not part of the service. So you can do it at night, can't do it at night. Because still service, right? Still mitzvah, part of the service. Ubos liachar misa. Also, if the owner of the korban dies, normally you can't continue to bring you can't bring a korban for somebody who died, right? You can't bring a korban chatos for somebody who dies. But if you've already done one application, you can continue and do the other three after he dies, because there's a mitzvah, but doesn't make the korban permissible. So therefore, that's why you can keep going. Also, if you do the sprinkling outside of the Azara, outside of the Beis HaMikdash area, you're liable for doing service in the wrong place, right? And you say, well, it's not service. The answer is service. So in some ways, it's service, and in some ways, it's not service, right? That's what we're seeing here.
Service.
It is service. That's correct.
Service.
It is service. But it doesn't require the owner. That's correct. That's correct. So now, Amar Rav Papa says, Yesh mehen kitchilaso, right? So some ways, the three blood applications that are after the first one is like the first one. V'yesh mehen kisofo. And in some ways, they're like the stuff that comes later, right? Like the pouring of the blood in the base of the mizbech, which is not required. So some ways like that. So here's his list. Chutz, first of all, as far as doing it outside the Beis HaMikdash, V'layla, as far as doing it at night, Zorus, as far as a non-Kohen doing it, and a non-Kohen being obligated getting a death penalty by Bidei Shemayim if he does it. Ukli Shares, the need to use a service utensil, right, to do the sprinkling from the service utensil. Keren, that it has to be applied onto the corner of the Mizbeach. The etzba, you have to use your finger to do the application of the blood. Kibus, that if the blood, and this is going to be the big issue, this is our new law that we're going to become experts in. If the blood gets onto a garment, onto the Kohen's garment, it's active blood, it must be washed off. Right, because you can't then take that blood and walk out of the Beis HaMikdash with that blood with you. That blood needs to be removed. And v'shirayim, and if you have a cup with some blood in it and you use some of that blood to apply to one of the corners, then the rest of that blood has to be poured into the base. That applies to even the extra three. Okay.
There's a problem with the blood on the float on the garment of the Kohen anyways.
It would invalidate the Kohen's garments, right? But the requirement of actually worrying about this blood, right? That's going to be a separate issue, right? He might be, okay, I guess I sprinkled and then it splashed and it got on my garment. That's not going to invalidate the sacrifice, right? But it still creates a problem on my garment.
You know, walk outside the Beis HaMikdash.
That's correct. There you go. So the answer is, in that regard, the blood is kitchilason. It's like live blood, part of the first blood service. It's really an active service. Now, as far as misa, as far as the owner dies, lo sharia. So it doesn't permit the permit as far as permitting the meat to be eaten. Right, and velo mefagla, as far as making the korban pigol, velo aila legavai. So there's no, and as far as taking it into the Beis HaMikdash, walking with this blood into the Beis HaMikdash, not outside, but walking inside, all of those ways, it's kisofan. This blood is like the later blood of Shirayim, and it's not going to be. It's not going to create. It doesn't count for pigol. It doesn't count to make the meat valid. It doesn't. You don't have to worry about. You can bring it after the person dies. Okay, now. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, "Mina. Where do I know a source for that? It's not. We learned it in a Mishnah. Nitaz minat savar al habeged." Okay, so we're going to focus in on this blood that splashes on the garment, and this issue is: at what point is the blood service finished enough that getting the blood on the garment doesn't need to be washed off? So here's our Mishnah, and it's going to be critical to focus on some of the difficult phrases in the words. Okay, the blood nitaz minat savar, blood sprinkles from splashes out of the animal's neck, ala beged, onto the garment. Eino ta'on kibus. So then that does not require, the blood doesn't have to be washed off. The pasuk says, "Vasher yaza midama ala beged." If blood splashes, if it sprinkles from its blood onto the garment, asher yiza aleha, which was sprinkled upon it, techabes b'makom kadosh, you must wash it in a holy place. Since the pasuk says asher yazeh after it was sprinkled, so we learn from that it has to be blood that can be used for sprinkling. Direct from the animal's neck, we know that can't be sprinkled on the mizbeach because it has to be caught in a kli first, right? We need a kabbalah's kli first. Since the blood has not been caught in a kli, it's not ready for sprinkling. That blood doesn't require the special rule of washing off. Okay, now.
It doesn't acquire kedusha yet?
It does have kedusha. There's a lot of... I'm trying to figure out what practical way to say that it requires kedusha, because we're going to learn later on that there's no prohibition of blood when it comes to tuma, none for nosar, none for pigul. So in a lot of ways, the blood, but we need psukim to prove all of those things being true. So it is part of the korban, right? So, but nevertheless, it doesn't have any of those other elements and challenges to it.
Inside the kli, then you can.
Now, once it's inside the kli, that now it has to be cleaned. That's correct. That's what we're saying. So now, because it becomes activated, right? It's activated, right? It's activated, right? Okay. So now, min ha-keren, once it's now, if the blood splashes, the kohen is there and he's sprinkling the blood on the mizbeach, and it splashes off of the corner of the mizbeach, umin ha-yesod, or from the base. Right? Now, remember the order here. The order of the service is he takes the utensil, he goes to the corner. He takes the blood application and he sprinkles it onto the corner of the mizbeach. After he completes all the sprinklings, he takes the remainder of the blood that he has in the bowl and he pours that down into the base, into the drain that's in the base. That's the order. If the blood sprinkles at that point, eino ta'un kibus, he does not have to wash it either, because the blood service is completed. So it's activated from the time it gets into the utensil until the time it gets sprinkled. Once it is, now it's going to be unclear because it said sprinkled on the corner and then it said poured into the drain. Those are two different times. What if the blood gets on after he sprinkles before he pours it in the drain? So that's why.
You have to be paying attention.
That's it. He doesn't pay attention. Well, that's why they wore white, right? So now,
the question doesn't make sense because it has to be part. When you're doing shirayim, that's the only way you have to get the blood on before it.
The question that we're asking, remember, this is the reason why we're bringing this up. Once you've sprinkled the blood one time,
right?
Now you're sprinkling it these 3 additional times.
Right.
Does the blood need to be washed off if the blood splatters during those 3 additional times? We said the blood needs to be washed. We had suggested the blood is, as far as washing is concerned, is like the first. It's active like the first blood. And now we're suggesting that it stays active all the way through until you pour it down. So now let's see the deal here. Ha min haroi lekeren tain kibus. Right? Once you sprinkle it, once the blood goes onto the corner, then you've got to then you don't have to wash the garment anymore because it's already been applied. Which means, when is the last moment that the blood needs to be washed off? If the blood is ready to go in the corner. Not once you've sprinkled it. Once you've done the sprinkle, right? I'm about to sprinkle it, then I've sprinkled it and it's splashed off. When I'm about to sprinkle it, then it needs to be washed. After I've sprinkled it one time, then it doesn't need to be washed off. Now, so therefore, you can prove from here that the blood for the 3 subsequent applications also doesn't need to be washed off. Because once you've applied it once, you're done. That's what this seems to imply. Okay, says the Gemara.
I thought it would imply the opposite. It would imply you do need to wash it off.
Because
min haroi means that these are roi to be sprinkled.
Yes, but roi means it has not been done yet. Once you've sprinkled it once, it's done.
Okay.
Oh.
Right. Min haroi, to do it means it has not been done. Says the Gemara, uletameich, if that's how you're going to read this Mishnah, it says min hayesod. It also says, and you're pouring it from the corner or from the base. well, that means Eino Ton Kibbutz. Then you don't need it to be washed, which means Ha Min Haroi Liyasod Ton Kibbutz. That means that if you were about to pour it in the base and you got it on you still have to wash it. Well, now that's confusing. That contradicts things. Because now, during those 3 applications, you haven't poured it in the base yet. So now that would imply that if you got blood on you from the 3 extra applications, you would need to wash it off. So how are you learning this Mishnah? This Mishnah seems to have 2 different ways of reading it, right? Asher yazeh, so the pasuk says, Asher yazeksiv, prat lezeh shekvar huza. So therefore, so the answer is, the pasuk says, right, that which is sprinkled, from that pasuk we're going to learn that we need blood that is going to be sprinkled on the Mizbeach, and it's going to exclude that which has already been sprinkled. So, therefore, yes?
I struggled with the second option because you couldn't, you're saying Shirayim is the second one, right?
Shirayim would be the second deadline.
Right, but that means the blood that you got on your clothes couldn't have been Shirayim. It means you got on your clothes.
Roi l'shirayim would need to be kibbutz.
Okay.
Right? Roi l'shirayim would need kibbutz. Right? So, okay, now, ha-money, so whose opinion is this? That says that blood of Shirayim also requires to be washed off. It's Reb Nechemiah's opinion. It's Reb Nechemiah's opinion, which we're going to see. Not exactly clear that Reb Nechemiah really holds this way, but we're going to presume, okay, that's what Reb Nechemiah is saying, that the blood still remains active until a later stage. Ditznan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Reb Nechemiah Omer, Reb Nechemiah says, Shiyari hadam, the leftover Shirayim blood that's in the utensil after you've done the sprinkling, shehikrivon bachutz, if you bring it outside the azara, chayiv, you get kares for doing that. So why does he hold that way? Must be because he holds, even after you've made the additional sprinklings, before you've poured it down Shirayim, the blood remains active. And since the blood remains active, that's why you still have to wash it off the garment. So that's consistent with Reb Nechemiah's point of view. Everybody else, other people would feel that the blood, once it's sprinkled the first time, is done, right? The blood service is done. But according to Reb Nechemiah, no, the blood remains active all the way until Shirayim. That's who this Mishnah is going like. Okay, so now, the Gemara says, I'm not sure that's what Reb Nechemiah holds. Because Eimar dishmas Reb Nechemiah le'inyan ha'ala. He says, as far as Reb Nechemiah is concerned, right, he says the extra, this blood, right, is only prohibited as far as bringing it as a korban outside, right? That is not, right? This is. Anything which is able to be brought bifnim, inside the azara, and then you bring it outside, you're chayev. Midi dehavi ha'evarim upedarim, which means that he's talking about this. He's saying that he's talking about the fats which have to be burnt, or the limbs that have to be burnt. That needs to be, that also, if he brings that outside, then that ruins the korban. He's chayev kares. However, le'inyan kibos mishmat le. But as far as requiring the blood to be washed off after the Shirayim, that he doesn't hold. So there's difference, right? You presumed, you've made a presumption in his opinion that Reb Nechemiah says that the Shiyari Adam is because he holds the blood as active. It's not. It's because you're taking something which can be elevated, as long as there are parts to be elevated outside, is prohibited to be brought outside. It has nothing to do with the leftover blood issue. So even Reb Nechemiah, there's nobody who holds that the blood that's supposed to be, once you've already applied it to the Mizbeach, still needs to be washed off. So
the service is done, basically.
So because it's done, right? So the answer is, he says, no, in Reb Nechemiah, really, they're going to stick to their guns there and say Reb Nechemiah does in fact hold that blood needs to be washed off. Vehatanya, but, and this is what we learned in a brisa, damim hateunin yesod, if you have blood that needs to now get poured into the base, te'onin kibus. So if some of it sprinkles onto the garment, so it needs to be washed off. Umachshavim, and it's very clear in this brisa, umachshavim moeves bahen. And if you have the wrong thoughts while you're pouring the blood into the yesod, according to this opinion, you also can commit meila. You can make pigul out of it that way, even during the shvicha of pouring it into the yesod. V'hamala mehan bachutz, and if somebody takes blood from the shirayim, from the leftover, and brings it outside the azara, chayiv, you are going to be liable because of hakrovas chutz, bringing something outside the Beis Mikdash. V'domim hanishpachin la'ama, but the blood that wasn't shirayim, the extra blood that is now going to be washed away, so that ain't tunin kibus. That is blood that doesn't require to be poured in the yesod. That blood can be washed out in they had this water trench in the to be able to like squeegee the blood into so that it would go out, and that spongia they call it, right, in Israel, right? Spongia, not squeegee, right? We call it squeegee. They call it spongia, right? So,
all the blood you want. That's always.
that's it. They plugged it up, right? That's what we had learned before,
Imagine that you walk into the Beit Mikdash, and today with Pesach it's all sterile.
right?
You come in all nice. For us, at that time, we're gonna come back bloody, and the shoes forget about it.
So now the blood that's supposed to be poured out, so ein tonin kibus, that blood doesn't need to be washed off. Vein machshava molelos behen, and there's no problem of pigul at that blood. V'hamala mehan bachutz is putter, and somebody brings it from the outside is exempt. Okay, so now man shmos de amar mala behen bachutz chayiv. Whose opinion is this in this brisa? Who's the one who says that bringing the blood outside your chayiv? So that's from Nechemiah. This is from Nechemiah's opinion. So v'kamer, it says very clearly ton kibus, that the blood needs to get washed off if it needs to be put into the yesod. And Gemara says, well, wait a second. That's not all he says. He says umachshava moelas behen, it commits meila. Well, v'hatanya, we're in a brisa. Yotzu shirayim v'aktaris imurin she'ein ma'akvinas hakapara she'machshava moelas behen. That here it says that the blood that you're supposed to pour for shirayim and the burning of the fats that are not required in order for a person to get kapara, so no thought is going to ruin the korban with them. So you just said you cannot. So the answer is kitanya hi b'shalosh matanos shebechatos. So the answer is that which we said in the brisa, that the blood that requires to be poured in the yesod, you can commit that you commit mi'ila on them, and you have to wash them. That is the blood of the three applications of the korban chatos, the last ones, and we're saying that it needs to be washed, right? But not dam, not by the ones of the last ones, not dam shirayim. So therefore, you can't learn from the brisa that the blood of shirayim requires to be washed, right? Only blood from the last three applications requires washing, not the blood of shirayim. Okay, so ihachi, if that's true, so te'unin yesod, so lekeren ozli. So what do you mean that this is the blood that's supposed to get poured? How are you understanding this now? You're saying that what we're learning is Rabbi Nechemiah holds that the blood that needs to be applied to the corners of the mizbeach still needs to be washed off, not the blood that needs to be poured into the yesod, because we just said the blood that poured into yesod, nobody holds that requires. So you've applied once, now you're going around, you're going to apply the other three. That blood still needs to be washed off. But the thing is that we called it Te'unin yesod, blood that needs to be poured into the yesod in this brisa. Well, that's not where it goes. It goes like Karen Ozli. It's supposed to be applied to the side of the mizbeach. So the answer is Ema nitonin yesod. We're going to have to say that the brisa is supposed to say, not you have to bring it to the yesod, but rather the kavana is that this is blood that when you sprinkle it, the remainder of that blood will then need to be poured into the yesod. And so that is the explanation. Okay, so now. So that's how we're going to explain this brisa. This brisa is stating very clearly that according to Rabbi Nechemiah, at least, we're going to require you to wash that blood even during the last three blood applications. Not when it's ready to be poured at the yesod, right? Everyone. Now, but now we just said that you can commit mi'ila by thinking about them. Hamart lo sharya v'lo mefaglo. We just learned that you're not. Doesn't that these last three applications lo aili legavai, and also there's no psul to bring them into the Beis Hamikdash. Kiss so fun because they're like shirayim. You're not going to create. You can't create You can't be. It's not a matir for the meat. It's not create pigul. It's not going to be invalidated to walk into the Beis Hamikdash. So the Gemara says, fair enough. We can't be talking about the 3 blood applications in that brisa either. So therefore, kitanya ahi, that brisa is bedamim hapnimim. It's not talking about the regular korbanos that we've been talking about that require blood applications on the mizbeach hachitzon. That brisa which talks about needing to be washed off is talking about blood applications of the korban that is sprinkled the blood inside the Beis Hamikdash. And remember, that blood has a completely different set of rules, right? The blood that when you have a korban apnimi, right, the 5 that we said, right, the goat, the bull of Yom Kippur, the parhelam davar of Beis Din makes a mistake, the Kohen Mashiach makes a mistake, and the Nasi, right? So they have their blood gets sprinkled on the inside. Those we said all 4 applications are required. And so therefore, all the blood is active. Nobody's disputing that. Not only is all the blood active, but we said you could create pigul because you're not finished with the korban. You don't get a kapara until you've done all the applications because all of them are required. That's what that price is talking about. So this price is not talking about the final 3 applications that we were looking to find out whether you needed to wash your garments from because it's not talking about those 3 applications. It's talking about this other korban. Okay, aval, so therefore, but bedamim hachitzonim, what would be the halacha for the blood that is from a korban that's on the outside? My potter, you would be exempt, right? You wouldn't. These laws don't apply. Washing doesn't apply. Adatani damim hanishpachim la'ama liflug v'les nibidida. So 1 second, if that's the case, so why does the Tana in the end of the brisa say that? He says, okay, you've got 2 different types of blood. You've got blood that needs to be poured into the yesod, according to this Tana. Remember this, now we're saying this, that blood is talking about the blood of the internal chatos. So the blood is still alive. You still have 1 step left to go. You finish sprinkling on the inside. Now take the remainder of your blood. You must pour it into the base of the outer mizbeach. In a korban chatos apnimi, every step is required. Okay, but they say, if it's the blood that's supposed to be poured into, that's going to be poured out into the drain, that you don't have to worry about. Why are you making a distinction between the blood poured into the drain and the blood poured into the yesod? Why don't you make it clear, the distinction that say, liflug v'les nebidida? Talk about the blood itself, the live blood. When is it that you are going to be liable that the blood is still needed and you have to worry about washing it off and you still are going to be chayiv if you take it outside and you're also going to have... What blood is that? That's damim pnimim. That's going to be blood from the inside, right? Aval bedamim achitzonim, but blood of a korban from outside, you'd be patur, you'd be exempt. The Mishnah doesn't say that. Maybe that's not the law. So, money. The answer is, whose opinion is this? This is Reb Nechemya. Amar shiari adam shikrivim b'chutz chayiv. Reb Nechemya couldn't say that. Because Reb Nechemya holds that, okay, fine, you don't have to, even Reb Nechemya might agree, you don't have to wash the blood off, but Reb Nechemya, we know, holds that if you take the blood of even a korban shebachutz, the korban on the outside, and you take it outside the azara, he still holds you liable for that. So therefore, he can't say that this is the rule, that's not the rule by an outside korban, because it's not true. So, lo masni le tlasa peturi lebahade tlasa chiyuve. He can't say, in this circumstance, these 3 rules apply, and in this circumstance, these 3 rules don't apply, right? He can't say you have to wash it, you have to worry about pigul, you have to be able to worry about bringing it up on the mizbeach outside. When on a korban chitzon, you don't have to worry about those 3 things, because he holds that one of those things you do have to worry about on a korban chitzon. Therefore, when he splits it up, he says, the blood that you're going to pour into the yesod, that's where you have to worry about those things. The blood that you're going to pour into the amma, that's where you don't have to worry about any of those things. Okay. So fine. So, Rav Papa, right, proved from the Mishnah that the 3 blood applications, right, require you to wash it. Right? That's what he's coming to. That's what he's going to prove. He proves it from that other additional Mishnah, and that is where we got to. Ravina says that you were asking about Rav Papa, that the Mishnah had 2 different ways of being looked at, right? We said, if it's blood that is going to the kerens, then you have to wash it off, which means Roy Lekeren requires washing. After it's already sprinkled, it doesn't require washing. Then we said, what about the yesod? And we said, if it's appropriate to go to the yesod, well, that was the question we asked. That's not a good question. Because mina keren, you have to read the Mishnah and you say mina keren, meaning if the blood splashes off of the corner, so then you don't need to wash it. That's mamish. That's where the Mishnah means it literally, right? You sprinkled it. Once you sprinkled once, you're done. Mina yesod, if it sprinkles off of the base, mina royal yesod. That means that if you've got blood that's now supposed to be poured into the yesod, that you don't have to wash off either. So you just have to look at the Mishnah and say, it doesn't, like you wanted to say that mina yesod means that mina royal yesod you do have to wash. No, not really, right? Don't be so precise in the language. Don't worry about it. That's what Ravina says. Amar le Rav Tachlifa bar Gazel Ravina. Rav Tachlifa bar Gaza says to Ravina, Ema idi v'idi roihu. Why don't you look at the language and say, look, why don't you say that it has to be that way? Look, the language should be consistent to the Mishnah. You're wording the Mishnah Ravina in a difficult way. You're saying that the blood that is appropriate for the Keren requires kibbutz, but on the Keren doesn't. And then when it says Yesod, appropriate for the Yesod doesn't either. You're being inconsistent. So Haimai. So he says, the Gemara says, what kind of question is that? It's not a question. Why? Because Hashta Roy LeKaren Amart Lo, Roy Liasod Mi Boy. Remember the chronology of this. The chronology is you show up with the blood and you've got to sprinkle it. At that point, the blood gets on your garment, you got to wash it. Then the Mishnah says, now you've sprinkled it and it splashes off. Now we said, you don't have to wash it. How could you understand the Mishnah to then say that when you're ready to pour it down the drain, you now have to wash it again? That's after the Mishnah already said you don't have to wash it at that point, right? Chronologically, you can't understand the Mishnah the way you're trying to understand it. Once you've sprinkled it once, the Mishnah says you don't have to wash it anymore. That means, even though you want to read the Mishnah means that when he's going to pour it down the Yesod to mean that if it's about to be poured down the Yesod, you still have to wash it. It can't mean that. Can't mean that. Ella mina Karen mamish. You have to read the Mishnah that way. You have to read the Mishnah that when it says that when you're about to put it onto the corner, it means the corner itself. Mina yesod, mina royal yesod. But what it means when it says that you don't have to wash it when it gets to the corner, when it gets to the base, that's blood that's about to be poured into the base. And so therefore, right, Rav Papa is correct. Rav Papa is proving from the Mishnah there, it's supporting again, that Rav Papa, even if you read the Mishnah itself, Rav Papa is correct that the blood of the three applications requires requires the washing. Okay, let's move on from washing. The Mishnah says all of the applications, now we're going to move in. We've discussed all there is to discuss about these outside applications. Now, the inside applications. We already started talking about the inside applications. The inside applications, all of them are required. Tana Rabbanan and rabbis learned. What's the source to tell us that all of the applications are required? Ve'asa, and we skipped the word lapar, even though the word lapar is in the pasuk. Ve'asa lapar, because the Gemara is going to be focusing on the pasuk. Ve'asa kasher asa. That's the extra words in the pasuk. But the whole pasuk, as I like to read the psukim, it says Ve'asa lapar kasher asa lapar chatas kin yasalo. The pasuk says that just like you did to the bull, right, that you did before. This is the kohen. This is the this pasuk is talking about the parhelam davar, right? If the community, like we learned in Horius, that if the Beis Din makes a mistake, you're going to bring the korban for that one. So we're going to say that the rules. This says that you have to bring this bull just like you brought the one for the kohen Mashiach, for the kohen gadol, that he makes a mistake. The bull is brought in the same way. Ma ba lilmod. What is the pasuk doing? This extra phrase v'asa kasher asa. You have to do it the same way. The answer is lichpol behaza'aso, to write a second time the procedure for the sprinkling. V'limeid, and that's going to tell us sheim chiser achas mikol amatanos loss of luklum. If you leave any of the sprinklings out, you have done nothing. You've accomplished zero. So therefore, it's written the second time. V'asa kasher asa. You have to do it a second time the same way. And we didn't need you to tell us that because you just wrote that you have to do it. The answer is it's required. Ain li ela matan sheva. So maybe it's talking about the blood application of the 7, right? Remember that for the application of of these 2 korbanos, the 3 really that are brought on the inside, other than the ones on Yom Kippur, the blood application was 4 applications on the corners of the mizbeach, and then 7 sprinkles on the top, 1 up and then down. Right, so you have to be able to do 7 sprinkles on the top. Maybe the required ones are the 7 sprinklings on the top, not the 4. So, why? Because the 7 are always required. The 4, we know by the Mizbeach outside, those are not required. So maybe the 4 are also not required inside. Only the 7 are the ones that are required. So minayin. So how do I know that you also are required to bring the 4? Those are required. Talmud Lomar. The pasuk says extra words again. Kein yaseh. Do it the same way. That it has to be the exact same way. Now, the pasuk now has the extra word lapar also, which we didn't bring in before, but now the word lapar, it says lapar, that you're going to do this to the same bull. Zepar Yom Kippurim, which tells me that this is also the procedure for the bull of the Yom Kippur offering, right? Also the blood is sprinkled on the inside. All of the applications are required. Then it says kasher asal lapar, it says again, an extra phrase, kasher asal lapar, do it again to the bull. That is Zepar Kohen Mashiach. That tells us the bull for the Kohen Mashiach, also everything is required. Okay, now, Brisa continues. We've got a lot of extra words in this pasuk. What about hakatas? Really, the whole pasuk is extra. So we're going to go through every word of this pasuk and point out what every word of this pasuk is telling me something extra. Hakatas, the pasuk says the sin offering. So it comes to tell us that this applies Elu seiri avodas kochavim. That's going to tell us to include the goat of avodah zarah, which is the last of the 5 korbanos, which are brought inside. So everything is done. Now, the only one that is not listed here is going to be the goat for Yom Kippur, right? Where are we going to know the goat for Yom Kippur? All of the applications are necessary. Hang on, we'll have to hold on to that. Maybe from achatos, it implies all the sin offerings. And remember that there are sin offerings as part of the extra korbanos that are brought on every holiday and on Rosh Chodesh, right? Every holiday and every Rosh Chodesh you have to also. Talmud Lomar, lo, the pasuk tells us lo, it is a exception, meaning only some of the korban chatoses are required to have all 4 applications, not all of them.
Were those ones for Rosh Chodesh and the...
No, they're brought outside.
Outside, yeah.
That's correct. And so therefore, that's the question. Why did you decide that the korbanos of Yom Kippur are included and the korbanos of the Shalosh Regalim and Rosh Chodesh are not? So the answer is, you've told, the pasuk said, to include some and to exclude others. The answer is, we got to go back to Maseches Shvuos. In Maseches Shvuos, we learned that the korban, what was the purpose of the korban chatos of Shalosh Regalim and Rosh Chodesh? That was what, if you knew about, you were tameh, and you knew about it, came into the Beis HaMikdash, and then you never became aware of it again. That's what that korban is for, to protect you against that. The one on Yom Kippur is for the Avera of if you never knew it in the beginning and you didn't know it at the end. So therefore, this is mechaper on a sin that you didn't know anything about. So that's why, if you're going to include one, you don't include the other one. These korbanos are different. Okay, so now the Brisa continues. Vechiper, an extra word again, another word vechiper. Af al pi shelo samach. You get an atonement even though you didn't do smicha. Right? Part of the Elam Davar part was that the bastin, the head of the bastin would come and he would lean on the offering. Let's say you skipped that, that's not required. But the blood application is required. If you skipped that part, that's not required. Smicha is never required. We're gonna see that as part of the korban. Venislach, and it says you'll get an atonement. Afa pishalon noton shirayim. You'll get an atonement even though you don't take the blood of these inside offerings. You're supposed to take the blood of the inside offerings and pour it down to the base of the outside. What if you don't? Is the korban invalid? No. The pouring of the blood outside does not invalid, according to this opinion, right? There's going to be another opinion that says, no, that's critical, right? But according to this opinion, that last step of taking that extra blood and pouring it on the mizbeach outside doesn't invalidate the ordering. Now, the pasuk just doesn't tell us what it's talking about. The pasuk just says extra words, right? So we're deciding based on the extra words. Some things are going to be included and some things are excluded. Some things are required, some things are not required. We decided that the blood applications are required and smicha and pouring the blood out is not required. Why did we do that? Why didn't we decide that smicha was required and pouring the blood out was required and the sprinklings were not required? So the answer is, Amart, Polso Bahazos, it makes better sense to say that we're going to invalidate the korban with the sprinklings of the blood, Shema'akvos Bechol Makom, because That's required service in every korban. You have to sprinkle blood in every korban. That's a required part of a korban. Leaning on an animal before you bring it and also pouring the blood out, that's not required in any korban. Why would all of a sudden the thing that was required, the thing that we would require by the inside korbanos, be the thing that's not required at all in any other korban? Shein makvos b'kol makom. Okay.
What are you said it's the Par Mashiach, Par Ham Davar.
Par Mashiach, Par Elam Davar, Seir of Avodah Zarah, and the Seir and the Par of Yom Kippur. Those are our 5. Okay, now it's good. This good. We got to good pick up all the good trivia, right? Those are our 5 korbanos that are brought inside, right? Amar Mar. So we brought in the brisa. Ein li ela matan sheva ma'akvos b'chol makom. So we say that 7 applications. Part of the brisa said, the 7 applications are always required, not the 4. So Heicha, what are we talking about? Where'd you find 7 applications are required? We never find 7 applications by any other korbanos except the internal ones. Where did you see that? So the answer, Amar of Papa. If Papa says, I'll tell you where. But Para Ubnegoyim. By the Paraduma, you have to sprinkle 7 times. And also when a mitzora, when somebody was tsaras, has to be cleansed, his applications are also 7 times. They're also a group. They have to be done. So whenever you see a sprinkling of 7, then you see it's required. I believe it's the Briskerov, and the Briskers are very big into learning Kudshim and things. There's a lot of good stuff. The Briskerov comments, the 7, Yeah, that's correct. And the 7 is a number that means a group of something, right? 7 days of a week, 7 of a Yom Tov. 4 is not a group of something. That's why it makes logical sense that you could do one of the sprinklings out of the 4, but it would never make sense that you would have one of the sprinklings out of a 7. A 7 is a group. So, okay.
Complete, no?
That's correct. It's a complete. That's what right? That's what we say. 8 is l'mala min hateva, is outside, is extra and above. 7 is the group of something that's a complete thing. That's correct.
Avram took one of those lamb and took them out from the 7.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I just thought, I don't know.
It's a good question. Now we got to take a look at that. What does that mean? That means that we're taking something out of a completed group, right? That's a great point. So we have to understand what that means. What was he taking out? Okay, Brisa says Matan Arba Minayin. Where do we know that we're going to now analyze some of the other phrases and things we discussed in this Brisa? Brisa says the 4 applications. How do we know that they're required? Because Talmud Lomar Ken Yaseh, right? This pasuk Ken Yaseh. Okay. Maishna matan sheva dechsivan ukfilon. So he says, well, why is it that you don't need to have a pasuk for the 7 and say that those are required? The answer is because the pasuk writes that you need to apply 7 blood applications, and then the next one says you need another 7 blood applications. Okay, but matan arba nami ksivan ukfilon. That's exactly how the pasuk describes the 4 blood applications. It writes it and then repeats it. So Rabbi Yirmiyah lo nitzracha ella l'Rabbi Shimon. You're right. What we need is that this is according to Rabbi Shimon's opinion. Detanya we're in our brisa. Lamala up above, right? And remember that in the Torah, the Kohen Mashiach is the first of these offerings that is mentioned, and then the Param Dover is the one afterwards. The bull that the Kohen Gadol is supposed to bring comes first. At that one, it says, the pasuk says, Omer Keren. It says, V'noson hakohen min adam al karnos mizbeach. You're supposed to put the blood application on the corners of the mizbeach. So that pasuk says, Keren, it's got to be put on, it says, that's singular, right? So therefore, you might think you only need to put it on 1. Then the pasuk says, Karnos Shtayim, then the pasuk says that it repeats it and says now you need to put it on karnos, onto the corners. That's 2 more. And then lamata, then in the next section, it says Keren, a singular again, another Keren. So it says Keren Karnos, right? Because it says it's plural. So Keren Karnos, he's being Doresh. Rabbi Shimon is being Doresh. Keren means 1, and then the fact the same word, it says Karnos again, means 2 more. So 1 plus 2, you've got 3. Then you've got Keren Karnos, so you've got that again. Singular, and then Karnos is double again, which means 2 corners. So that means Arba. You've got 2 corners in Kohen Mashiach, 2 corners in the Par Halam Davar. So that sprinkling, that application of 4, it never says you need to apply 4. That's his point. It says you need to apply it on the corners. Corners only means 2. So therefore it's 2 plus 2. I might think you only need 4. Therefore I need the pasuk to tell me extra that they're required. That's how Rabbi Shimon learns it. But it's only according to the sheet of Rabbi Shimon, because Rabbi Yehuda says, Einot tzarich, I don't need that, because Harei hu omer be'ohel moed, the pasuk says that the applications have to be done in the Ohel Moed, which is an extra phrase, which means that it has to be applied on the corners of the Mizbeach in the Ohel Moed, which means all of the corners that are on the Mizbeach in the Ohel Moed need a blood application. There are 4 corners, hence 4 applications. Al kol amar b'Ohel Moed, every corner that's in the Ohel Moed requires a blood application. Therefore, it's written 4 corners by the Param Davar, and it's written 4 corners by the Par Mashiach. That means 4 and 4 is repeated, which means that means that according to that is unnecessary. Now, Rabbi Yehuda ken yaseh mayavidle. So if Rabbi Yehuda doesn't need the pasuk ken yaseh, what does he do with it? Why is he using what does he use that for? So the answer is miboyle lichetanya. We need that phrase according to what we learned in the Brisa. Levi shalolamanu leparsh Yom Kippurim lismicha l'shiari adam. We never learned by the bull of Yom Kippur. It doesn't say anywhere in those psukim that you have to lean on it and that you have to have leftover blood. What do you mean you don't lean on it? Don't you? Of course, it's in the. So you have to smicha. You have to say, and these are my averos and the averos of Klal Yisrael, right? There's no, says I think it's the Brisker Rav. There's a difference between the rule of smicha of confession and smicha of korban, right? What would be some of the differences? For example, we learned that smicha has to be done right before shechita. If all it is a confession and a transfer, then why would the smicha have to be done right before the shechita? Why would the smicha doesn't have to be done right before the shechita? I could just take the bull outside in the courtyard and do a confession on it. The fact that I need a confession, I need the halachic korban smicha. That's what we're saying. So it's not written. It doesn't. How do I know that I need that? Ken yaseh. The pasuk ken yaseh tells me that the bull of Yom Kippur requires that you have to do smicha, that you have to lean on it, and you also have to take the leftover blood and pour it into the base. Now, lepar Yom Kippurim lo lamadnu. Now, are you saying that we never learned from the bull of the Yom Kippur that it doesn't require to be leaned on and the blood? Ha'amart, we said in the Brisa above, lapar, right? Remember the word lapar told me to include the rules of these offerings onto the bull of Yom Kippur. Ze Yom Kippurim. So the answer is, no, itzrich. I need 2 psukim for the bull of Yom Kippur. Because why? Salka daita chamina. You know what I would have thought that the rules apply to by the Yom Kippur? Hani mili avoda de ma'akva kapara. I would say it's the service that's required, the essential service, that if you don't do it, that you then you don't get an atonement for. The blood applications, for example. Aval avoda de lo ma'akva kapara, but to learn from these other korbanos, even those services that are not required, Imalo would say, no, those don't apply, so I don't have to do smicha, I don't have to pour the blood. So therefore, kamash malan, therefore I have an extra pasuk, ken yaseh, to tell me that the bull of Yom Kippur has the same rules. These blood offerings are required, these things are not required, but they're mitzvahs to do. Now, Rabbi Shimon, hi ba'ol moed ma'avli. What does Rabbi Shimon do with the pasuk ol moed? Right, he doesn't need that pasuk. So the answer is be'ol moed mi boile shem nivchasa tikra shel heichal lo haya mazeh. He says that ol moed tells me the Beis HaMikdash has to have a roof. If the Beis HaMikdash is undergoing renovations and there's a hole in the roof, then you can't do the blood applications. In the Heichal, right? Those blood applications are no good. Now, Rashi points out.
Keep going.
Okay, so the thing is that this is required for the sprinkling of the blood of Yom Kippur, right? The other korbanos potentially you don't need it. You don't need a roof for those because they're brought outside anyway. So anyway, fine. So so now ve'idach. Now Rabbi Yehuda, where does he know that you need a roof? So he says mi asher. From the place it says asher bo'am moed, the asher. Now ve'idach asher lo dars. The other one says asher is just part of that phrase. It doesn't have an extra drasha to it. Okay, good. Abayi says, L'Rebbe Yehuda nami itzrich. According to Rabbi Yehuda, I still need the pasuk ken yaseh because salka daita chamina. I would have thought midi dahava smicha v'shiari adam. Those rules, right, of leaning and shvichas damim, right, which by the param davar. So af al gav dichsivan ukfilon, even though they're written and they are repeated, lo ma'akva. We still they're not required, right? Those are services that are not required. Matan arba nami lo tisakev, you might have thought that despite the fact that the 4 applications are written and repeated, they're not required, kamash malan. So therefore, Ken Yaseh tells us that the chatos pnimios, the 4 applications are required. They're required no matter what. And these other services are not. Okay, continuing on until we still have one guy left to find, right? Is that, or no, we're good.
Wait.
We have.
Okay,
What was
let's
that? We're waiting for
continue.
Minion?
No, we decided we're not doing that anymore. We're not waiting for Minyanim anymore. If it's not at 9:30, then there's no Minyan.
Okay.
Yeah,
So fine. Let's see if we
we
can.
don't wait anymore.
Let's see if we can turn one more page. Okay. Gemara says par lapar zepar Yom Kippur. Lapar means the bull of Yom Kippur, right? Lamai hilchaso. What practical what's the practical point of bringing the bull of Yom Kippur into this pasuk? Lamai hilchaso. If you're going to tell us that all of the blood applications of the bull and Yom Kippur are required, pshita, that you don't need it for. Why? Because chukah ksiva bay. We have a rule that says whenever in Kodshim the word chuk appears, it means that it is a law and must be done. So therefore, by the korban Yom Kippur itself, it says you have to sprinkle the blood because the pasuk says at the end of the pasuk, "V'aysa zos lachem lechukas olam." This will be chukas olam, which means everything written by the bull of Yom Kippur is required. So therefore, I don't need a pasuk to tell me that it's doubled so that it's required. I already know it's required. So Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, "Lo nitzchak." I'll tell you why it says does it, because it's Ela l'Rabbi Yehuda. I need it according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. De Amar ki ksiva chuka ad devarim hanasa b'big day lavan bifnim. The word chuka is not a universal word chuka. It doesn't mean everything in Yom Kippur is required. It means only those things that are done when the Kohen Gadol is wearing the special white garments on Yom Kippur inside the Beis HaMikdash.
Could that be one of the reasons why we wear kittles now?
That could be one of the reasons why we wear kittles now. Could be. It's a good point. She'im hikdim ma'aseh lachavero. And what's the practical ramification? If you do the service out of order, if the service lo asav lo klum, if the Kohen sprinkles the blood out of order in the wrong way inside the Beis HaMikdash, then his service is invalid. It must be redone. Aval, however, dvar manasem bebigdei lavan bachutz. But if he's wearing his big day lavan and he's outside of the Beis HaMikdash and he does something out of order, then hikdim ma'aseh lachavero, puts something out of the order. Masha asa asoi. Whatever he does is okay. It's fine. You don't have to redo that. So therefore, ema. So I would say mida kisidron lo makvi. So since the order is not critical, hazos nami lo makvi. The sprinkling also might not be critical, right? The sprinkling themselves, right? The order of the sprinklers are not, so maybe not. So kamash malon. So therefore, right, by the way, bechutz means kodesh HaKadoshim, outside the kodesh HaKadoshim. Normally we've been saying bachutz means in the azara, right, outside. This bachutz means outside the kodesh HaKadoshim. Only the sprinklings that are done in the kodesh HaKadoshim must be done in order. Anything that's done in the Beis HaMikdash does not need to be done in order. Therefore, you might think, okay, if I leave it out altogether, it's also okay. Not true. Therefore, the pasuk has to say kenyas lapar to tell me that those are required.
He doesn't wear the big day lavan outside.
That's correct. That's a good clarification. Yes. So, maskif la Rav Papa. Okay, Rav Papa says on the statement of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, umi matis amar haki. Can you say that? V'atanya we're in a brisa. V'chila mikaper es hakodesh. He completes from atoning for the holy service that he was doing in the Yom Moed. So, im kiper kila. So the explanation that we're going to see means that Rabbi Akiva learns if he has done the kapara, right, meaning he's done all the blood services, he's done the sprinklings, kila, then he's done. Im lo kiper, if he does not do all the sprinklings, then lo kila, then he's not done. So therefore, divrei Rabbi Akiva, as Rabbi Akiva says. So from this pasuk, v'chila mikaper ala kodesh means the sprinkling is required, because if he did it, then he's done. If he doesn't do it, he's not done. Amar le Rabbi Yehuda, to what Rabbi Yehuda says, mipnei ma lo nemar. Why are you reading the pasuk backwards? Right? In the pasuk it says, kila mikaper, you're finished from atoning, meaning, im kila, if you finish every single thing, including pouring the blood out, that's what's missing in that list, right? Rabbi Akiva doesn't require that. If you've done everything, kiper, then you've gotten an atonement. Im lo kila, if you have not completed, then you haven't gotten an atonement. Rabbi Akiva is reading it, if you've gotten an atonement, meaning if you've done the sprinkling, then you're done. He says, no, it's if you're finished, meaning you finished every single thing, then you've gotten an atonement. Okay, but regardless, the point of it is, regardless of how you hold side on that machlokes, it seems clear that you can't learn that the blood applications are not required, right? From this pasuk, clearly, even Rabbi Akiva, everybody holds the blood applications are required. So Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa says, no, I'll tell you why the par of Yom Kippur needs to be compared to the par Elam Davar is with the word lapar, Ella le'es dam u'bitvila, Ella le'es dam u'tvila, es dam u'tvila. There are three halachos that we learn from the three words, es, dam, and tvila, which we're going to learn in a moment. Those rules which apply by the par Elam Davar also apply by the bull of Yom Kippur. What are those things? Es, the word es is in the pasuk by the par kohen Mashiach. The pasuk we're talking about, by the way, is v'taval hakohen es etzba'o b'dam. The kohen is going to put his blood into his finger into the blood. V'hizah min adam sheva pa'amim lifnei Hashem, and he's going to sprinkle from the blood 7 times. In that pasuk, 3 words are extra. Es, he doesn't have to be there. V'taval, he has to dip, doesn't have to be there, right? And then it says, and badam, in the blood, because what else is he dipping in? So those things are not, those words are not extra. Why are those 3 words extra? Teaches me 3 halachos. Es, Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, lo nitzrecha, lahachshir amin sheba emtza. The answer is to tell us that if a Kohen is doing the service, the Kohen goes doing the service, and he has a blister on his finger, that's not going to invalid. That's not a chatzitza. It's part of his finger. Right. You might have thought it would be a problem. Yeah. Es means es etzbad, not only his finger, but that which is part of his finger is also acceptable. So, second of all, badam, it has to be done in the blood. Sheyehei badam, that means that you have to use the blood that's in the utensil, right? So that sheyehei badam shir tvila mikara. That means you have to have in the utensil the amount of blood that you're going to need in order to dip into it. You can't take some blood and then pour some more blood in after you've done some of it.
If he doesn't put on his finger, it could get infected, and can infection be a problem as well?
The infection is not our issue as far as the kashrus of the korban, right? That go see a doctor, okay, right? But as far as the blood, as far as the kapara of the korban is concerned, v'taval. Then the word v'taval means v'lo misapeg, means that he can't sponge, meaning don't scoop off the side of the utensil. You got to get into the middle, right? You can't go and scoop and wipe from the side. Now. The itzrich, you need all of those, and now we've learned that those are 3 words that are extra by the bull of the Kohen Mashiach, and we're learning that now those rules apply to the bull of Yom Kippur as well. The itzrich lemichtav badam, the pasuk is required to write badam, right? Because the ikas of Rachmana v'taval, if the pasuk had only told us that he's got to dip into it, havamina afal gav deleka shir tvila mikara. You might say, okay, that even if I don't have enough blood in there at the first, I don't wipe off the side because of Rachmana badam. The pasuk has to say you need enough blood in there. Ikas of Rachmana badam, if the pasuk had said I need enough blood, havamina afilu misafeg. I might have thought, okay, I got plenty of blood, but I can wipe from the side because of Rachmana b'taval. I need to be able to dip. Okay, so that's probably a good place for us to stop today.
Little section here before the Gemara returns to future discussion. I don't know if...
There's that little section there?
Yeah, what do you
Mizbeah. Fine, Mizbeach Torres Samim Lamali. Okay, so then the question is going to be asked, right? Mizbeach Torres Samim Lamali. Why does the pasuk say in that pasuk, right? Since we're on that pasuk anyway, then the pasuk, the Gemara wants to know extra words in that pasuk that we're going to sprinkle it onto the mizbeach, which is for the incense. Why do I need to say that? Sheimlo nischanech hamizbeach b'ktoras hasamim, to tell me that this mizbeach, which is on the inside, its essential main purpose is for incense. That's what's done every day. Right. So therefore, what if you just got a new mizbeach, brand new for Yom Kippur? So they get a brand new one as shechiyanu. They've never done ketoras on it yet. If that's the case, shalom nischanech hamizbeach b'ktoras. If you've not done ketoras on it, lo hayamaza, you cannot sprinkle the blood on it. It's only if the mizbeach was used for ketoras at least once, then you can apply the blood on Yom Kippur. If you or for these other internal korbanos, it has to be a mizbeach haketoras. That's what that pasuk for.
If you never been.
That's correct. Not mizbeach.